Breaking news from around your world on this Wednesday, July 10th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Louisiana officials have declared a state of emergency ahead of severe tropical weather expected to significantly impact the state. Governor John Bel Edwards said this is going to be a Louisiana event with coastal flooding and heavy rainfall potentially impacting every part of the state. No one should take this storm lightly. Meteorologists said a low-pressure area in the Gulf of Mexico is a near certainty to become a tropical depression Wednesday or Thursday, with a Louisiana landfall as a Category 1 Hurricane Barry, likely late Friday or Saturday. The slow-moving storm is expected to only travel at 3 to 5 miles per hour. Rain from this storm is expected to last into next week as the storm tracks north through central Louisiana. The system has already produced torrential rain in southern Louisiana, causing street flooding in New Orleans Wednesday. Between 10 to 15 inches of rain is expected to fall in southeast Louisiana in a 24-hour period starting Friday. During Hurricane Isaac in 2012 and Hurricane Katrina in 2005, a storm surge pushed well upriver. But in those cases, the Mississippi was at a height of 3 feet or less. This is important context considering the Mississippi River is at 16 feet right now because of the wettest 12 months on record in the U.S. Before adding this storm's expected rainfall, the Mississippi River in New Orleans was forecast to crest at 20 feet, which is the same height of the levees in New Orleans. Governor Edwards urged people to take this storm seriously. President Donald Trump warned on Wednesday that the U.S. sanctions on Iran would be increased substantially soon as the UN nuclear watchdog agency held an emergency meeting at Washington's request to weigh Tehran's breach of a nuclear deal. Washington used the session of the International Atomic Energy Agency's Board of Governors to accuse Iran of extortion after it inched past the deal's limit on enrichment levels over the past week, while still offering to hold talks with Tehran. Iran says it is reacting to harsh U.S. economic sanctions imposed on Tehran since Trump pulled Washington out of the nuclear deal in 2018 and says all its steps were reversible if Washington returned to the agreement. While Iran was found to have had covert enrichment sites long before the nuclear accord, the 2015 deal imposed the most intrusive nuclear supervision on Iran of any country. And there has been no serious suggestion Iran is secretly enriching now in a way that would hint at an effort to develop a nuclear weapon. A Soviet nuclear submarine which sank off Norway in 1989 is still emitting radiation. That's the word from researchers Wednesday following an expedition that used a remotely controlled vehicle for the first time. The wreck of the Komsomolets lies on the bottom of the Norwegian Sea at a depth of about 1,700 meters. Authorities have conducted yearly expeditions to monitor radiation levels since the 1990s, but this year's inspection was the first one to use a remotely operated vehicle called Aegir 6000 to film the wreckage and take samples, which will be further analyzed. The Norwegian Radiation and Nuclear Safety Authority said in a statement that the mission's samples showed levels of radioactivity at the site up to 800,000 times higher than normal. Expedition leader Hilde Elise Heidel of the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research said, "This is, of course, a higher level than we would usually measure out at sea, but the levels we have found now are not alarming." She said radioactivity levels thin out quickly at these depths, and there are few fish in the area. The Komsomolets sank on April 7, 1989, after a fire broke out on board, killing 42 crew. 14 Russian sailors were killed July 1st of this year aboard a nuclear research submarine operating in the Arctic. Attorneys from the Justice Department Inspector General's office interviewed former British intelligence agent Christopher Steele, author of a controversial dossier on alleged ties between President Trump and Russia, as part of an inquiry into the origins of the FBI's investigation into Russian election meddling and possible collusion by Trump associates. The Steele dossier, which was funded by the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, alleged that Russia tried to interfere with the 2016 U.S. presidential election, possibly with collusion by Trump associates, and that Moscow had dirt on Trump. Inspector General Michael Horowitz's office has conducted more than 100 interviews since starting its inquiry in March of 2018. A federal appeals court ruled on Tuesday that President Trump violated the Constitution by blocking people whose views he's disliked from his Twitter account. In a 3-0 decision, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan said the First Amendment forbids Trump from using Twitter's blocking function to limit access to his account, which has 61.8 million followers. Circuit Judge Barrington Parker, citing several Supreme Court decisions, wrote, "The First Amendment does not permit a public official who utilizes a social media account for all manner of official purposes to exclude persons from an otherwise open online dialogue because they expressed views with which the official disagrees." Kelly Lako, a Justice Department spokeswoman, which argued the appeal, said, "We are disappointed with the court's decision and are exploring possible next steps." The White House declined to comment. White House social media director Dan Scavino was also a defendant. Twitter declined to comment. Meanwhile, a federal appeals court threw out a lawsuit Wednesday accusing President Trump of illegally profiting off the presidency through his luxury Washington hotel. A 3-judge panel of the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously overturned the ruling of a federal judge in Maryland who said the lawsuit could move forward. The state of Maryland and the District of Columbia sued in 2017, claiming Trump had violated the emoluments clause of the Constitution by accepting profits through foreign and domestic officials who stay at his Washington hotel. The provision prohibits federal officials from accepting benefits from foreign or state governments without congressional approval. The Fourth Circuit found the two jurisdictions lack standing to pursue their claims against the president and granted a petition for a rare writ of mandamus, directing U.S. District Court Judge Peter Massett to dismiss the lawsuit. Just blocks away from the White House, the iconic old post office quickly became a hotspot for lobbyists and foreign officials after it reopened in October 2016 as the Trump International Hotel. A public relations firm working for Saudi Arabia spent nearly $270,000 on food and rooms. The Philippine and Kuwaiti embassies have also had parties there. Mexican authorities say they caught more than 200 undocumented migrants trying to enter the U.S. hidden in trucks in recent days. Mexico released X-rays showing some of the migrants lying down in compartments. Mexican security officials have stepped up efforts to curb a record wave of migrants from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador who have reached the U.S.-Mexico border and prompted President Trump to declare the crisis to be a national emergency. The number of people detained at the border fell by 28% in June. U.S. authorities said the decline to 104,344 in June from 144,278 in May showed that Mexico's crackdown on Central American migrants was working. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell began the first of 2 days of testimony in Congress Wednesday, where he hinted the Fed is eyeing an interest rate cut at its next policy meeting this month. Testifying before the House Financial Services Committee, Powell said June's positive jobs report hasn't changed the Fed's economic outlook that includes a possible rate cut. When asked how large a cut could be made at the July 30th policy meeting, Powell answered the Federal Open Market Committee will look at a full range of data. The Fed board increased interest rates 4 times in 2018, but hasn't touched them so far this year. Many analysts saw Powell's testimony Wednesday as a clear endorsement for a rate cut. Oxford economics analyst Kathy Bostjanik says she expects a quarter-point cut at the July meeting and another in September. Powell's appearance in the House Wednesday was the second of 2 congressional meetings the Fed chief must attend each year to update lawmakers on the state of the U.S. economy and other pressing issues. Despite recent trade conflicts and a substantial tariff war, the domestic market remains strong in the eyes of analysts. Last week, the U.S. economy entered its longest period of recession-free growth on record, 121 months, dating back to 2009. Global prices for many agricultural products are expected to fall over the next decade. That's according to a report released this week by the UN's Food and Agricultural Organization and the 36-member nation Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They envision that demand for food will increase some 15% over the next 10 years as the world's population grows and more people escape poverty. But agricultural production is expected to increase even faster. The report said yield improvements and higher production intensity driven by technological innovation will result in higher output, even as global agricultural land use remains broadly constant. Agriculture in the United States and around the world has steadily become more productive. Each year, advances in crop science and technology increase yields and grow animals fatter and faster. Michael Nupo, an economist with the American Farm Bureau Federation, said, barring any major trade or production disruptions, the report's general conclusions are believable. And that's your update for this Wednesday, July 10th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening and for supporting this podcast with your generous donations. I hope you have a wonderful day.